Welcome to the PeakDay podcast, where we discuss fertility and NFP with our friends. I am your host, Martha Haney, and today's guest is Amanda Rowetter. Amanda is a degreed nutritionist who loves the idea of evangelizing through nutrition. Her ministry, Temple and Table, combines theological discussion with practical nutrition, celebrating the deep connection between body and spirit with wholesome food, real conversation, and authentic community. Amanda is a regular contributor to the Couple to Couple League Family Foundations magazine and also contributes to the lifestyle and nutrition area of the Fertility Science Institute at fsi.org. Welcome, Amanda.
Thank you so much.
During the different phases of a cycle, are there specific foods that women should concentrate on?
Absolutely. So there's basically three kind of phases of the cycle and then menstruation. So 4, if you look at it like that. I would love to go through each phase and just talk about what the needs are in each phase. So of course you have the menstruation, the menses phase when you're actively bleeding. And that occurs days 1 to 5. So that's kind of marks the start of your cycle, if you will. And because you are losing iron through the bleeding, iron is an essential mineral, so we have to get it through our diet. So great sources of iron are dark green leafy vegetables, spinach, collard greens, things like that. There's also beans and beef, shellfish. Quinoa is a great plant-based grain that has high protein as well and a pretty good iron source. And then dark chocolate, which we all crave chocolate during our cycles or at different points. And that's why, right? So as I go through these, I want you to be thinking about, oh yeah, I really do start craving those kinds of things. And the more that we feed our bodies with the right sources of these minerals and vitamins that our bodies are craving, the more that your body will crave those better things for you. So I know a lot of times we get cravings at different parts of our cycle for sugar and things like that. And the more that we kind of succumb to those cravings, the more that we will crave them. Like a craving begets a craving. But if you're satisfying your body with the nutrients that it actually needs, then you'll see a kind of a lessening of those, which is really nice. So we have our, menstruation phase where iron is really important. And then you have the follicular phase, which is days 1 to 14 of the average cycle. Your body's preparing for potential pregnancy, right? So estrogen levels are rising in that phase because the endometrial lining of your uterus is trying to grow. It's trying to thicken. So that change in estrogen requires more nutrients and more energy, right? Your body's kind of tired. And in that phase, what you want to focus on are complex carbohydrates. So fruits, whole grains, starchy vegetables. But complex carbohydrates versus simple carbohydrates take longer for your body to break down. So you're going to get that good energy that you want, but your body can process it really quickly. But you'll stay kind of satisfied longer, if you will. And then hydration's really key during this phase. So really focusing on your water intake is key throughout your whole cycle, but particularly in that beginning half of your cycle. And then we have the ovulation, which happens usually in the middle of a cycle around day 14. And of course, Couple to Couple League encourages you to track your cycle, which I started way too late. So track your cycle, ladies, because it's really important to know your body and where your body is so that you can nutritionally support it, but also to just be aware of these things that are happening in your body. And you can have a healthier relationship with your cycle too. So side note there, but important side note. So ovulation is obviously where your egg is released from your ovary for potential fertilization. And your diet has a huge connection to ovulation. I know So many women are struggling with infertility, and it's very sensitive, of course, and it can be extremely heart-wrenching the longer that you struggle with it. But something that you can really focus on that you have control over is how you're intaking, your diet and intaking foods. And there's a great connection between ovulation and your diet. So here I recommend like low glycemic carbohydrates. And I don't want to get too scientific, but basically those are your complex carbohydrates that I just talked about. Those complex carbohydrates, those good unsaturated fats, and antioxidant rich foods are really key here because it brings down inflammation. And then vitamin D and folic acid. So great sources here are salmon, flax and chia seeds, walnuts, dark leafy greens, all the berries, and they're coming into season with summer. So those are great. High vegetables that are vegetables that are high in folic acid are actually asparagus and radishes. So I think with nutrition too, you can overcomplicate it, right? And you'll see that as I'm going through these, I'm talking about a lot of the same things: whole foods, those complex carbohydrates, good fats like avocado, salmon. Really, if you have a whole diet that incorporates fruits and vegetables and minimally processed foods, you should really cover your bases pretty well. But if you're struggling at different points, it is nice to know what specific nutrients your body needs at that time. So then the last one is the luteal phase, the premenstrual phase, which for someone like me that had really debilitating PMS symptoms, I really try to concentrate on having good nutrition in this phase, which is that last part of your cycle, days 14 to 28. And here your body is, the progesterone levels are increasing because your body's preparing for menstruation. It's preparing for a potential pregnancy. So it's trying to maintain that uterine lining. And right here, your body, you really need to focus on adequate protein and fat intake because your body's using a lot of energy, right? So here is where you think of, oh my gosh, I'm so tired, right? At the second half of my cycle. This is when those cravings are like really ramping up, right? And so adequate protein sources, a lot of women don't get quite enough protein, and you have higher protein needs here. So for the typical woman, that is around 50 grams a day, and most women don't even get that. So you might even want to ramp it up to somewhere around 70 grams a day here, or even above that. And then, so to combat those cravings, which I'm sure people will be interested in, it's kind of counterintuitive, but to balance your blood sugar, you want to actually, a lot of women don't eat enough. Like they think, oh, some women are trying to lose weight or something like that. And so they restrict their calories, but that actually increases your cravings. So the more that you can just have smaller meals throughout the day, don't avoid meals, ladies. That's the good news here. And add an extra protein rich snack during your day. So have that apple with a, scoop of peanut butter, have a cheese stick with some nuts, something like that, where you're getting a good protein, good fat. Avocado toast is great on whole grain bread. Things like that will keep your cravings at bay, and increasing your fiber is actually really good there too. So your whole grains, your beans, your complex carbohydrates, things like that will give you a lot of good fiber. And those dark leafy greens, I'm going to say it throughout the whole cycle, right? They're always good for you.
So Amanda, let's talk about fat. For a long time, fat was, a big no-no word. The information about fat has changed an awful lot. So can you kind of differentiate between good fats and bad fats? And, what are the good fats that we should be eating?
Yeah, it's a great question because I think there's a lot of fad diets out there that either focus on a high intake of fat or are kind of promoting different kinds of fats. And so what you really want to focus on are the mono and polyunsaturated sources of fat. And the best ones for those are avocados are great fats, olive oils, coconut oils, your more fatty fishes like salmon, and um, those are some examples. And I, with higher fat diets like keto and things like that are being promoted, those in the nutrition world are really specialized diets for people that have really specific dietary needs where their body processes fat differently than what would be a normal processing of a macronutrient. And so I would just encourage listeners to focus more on having a fat source, a protein source, and a carbohydrate source with every meal or snack, right? So if you eat carbohydrates alone, carbohydrates aren't bad. They just, if eaten alone, your body will process them differently and it will affect your blood sugar levels and it will give you spikes. But when you eat a fat combined with a carbohydrate, combined with a protein source, that's where your body will understand how to metabolize them perfectly. That's how we're designed to eat, is having a source from each of those categories. So that's a tip with fats as well. And then also always have full fat dairy, which is great news. You love to hear that from a nutritionist, right? So always have full fat dairy, either whole or 2% or something like that, because when you consume lower fat dairy, you're only getting the milk sugars. And again, they usually strip away the fat, obviously, content, but that's what helps your body to process the milk sugars and avoid those spikes in blood sugar.
Different nutrition needs for somebody who is suffering from PCOS. And tell us just a little bit about what PCOS is.
Yes. So PCOS is polycystic ovarian syndrome, and it's usually coupled with really debilitating symptoms, usually very bad cramping, sometimes heavy bleeding, and you can actually have ruptures in those cysts. So it's a really complex kind of disease state, if you will. And for those suffering from PCOS, I definitely encourage you to talk to your gynecologist about any symptoms that you're experiencing, because it could point to that. As far as your nutritional needs around it, what's really important with PCOS is those balanced blood sugar levels, like we've been talking about. So you want to don't skip meals. Focus on those good fats. And those full fat dairy usually contains vitamin D, which helps with PCOS symptoms. And flax meal is really great because it's a good source of omega-3, those good fats, good fatty acids. Nuts and nut butters are a great way to get those healthy fats. And they also have vitamin E, which helps mitigate PCOS symptoms. And I encourage for PCOS and PMS and heavy bleeding, I actually created some educational materials within the Fertility Science Institute resources in that lifestyle section that you mentioned earlier. There's smoothies that I designed for each of those things. And I just encourage readers to go seek those out, because smoothies are a really easy way to get a lot of nutrition in one meal, and they're easy for our on-the-go busy lives as well. So take a look at that if you get a chance.
Can you talk to us real briefly about supplementation?
Usually people that suffer with different aspects around their cycle, with different negative symptoms, a vitamin B supplement is usually a good thing to seek out. And again, talk to your providers about these things, because there are different ways to get supplementation in different supplement companies, and you just have to be really careful about the source. So You might need a vitamin B supplement around your cycle. You might need an iron supplement around your cycle. That really helped me, especially with iron supplementation, because I already run low in my iron stores. And so, and iron is an essential nutrient, which means we have to get it from our diet. So, and then vitamin D is a really common deficiency in women, especially, and it can affect your calcium absorption and things like that. And so those are kind of the three main ones that you might want to think about supplementing with. And just a quick tip for looking for quality supplements, as much as you can, look at the back of the label and look for the supplement coming from a whole food source. So flax is another supplement, or cod liver oil, things like that. As if they come from a whole food source, your body's going to absorb them much better than a synthetic supplement of any kind. So that's something to look for. But again, go back to your local registered dietitian or nutritionist or medical provider to talk to them about that.
So maybe something real quick about differing nutrition needs as you age.
Yeah. So really quickly, there's a few things as you age that happen. So one is slower metabolism. Our metabolism naturally slows. And so what that means is that you have lower caloric needs naturally for your body. And typically, so that's a little bit lower than a 2,000 calorie diet per day, if you're trying to maintain weight. So that might mean lowering it to around 1,500, something like that. This is women that are, getting into mid 40s to beginning of 50s is when it starts to slow down, really. And then you're also naturally lose muscle mass. So having a protein rich diet, making sure you're getting, that 50 grams of protein in the day, and then really focusing on a lot of fruit and vegetable intake. So having a fruit or vegetable with every meal or snack is important, because you're getting your vitamins and minerals there that are helpful with bone health and immune health, which are really important as you age. And then, of course, adequate water intake is really important, because digestion is different and slows down, and your absorption of nutrients is affected as you age as well. So adequate water intake. So those three things: lower caloric needs, protein-rich foods, fruit and vegetable intake, adequate water intake.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Just perfect. So let's talk about Temple and Table.
Sure.
So you have a ministry, it's called Temple and Table. How was that conceived?
Yeah. So the long story short, I ran into a dear priest friend and was just talking to him about how I wanted to live into my vocation more and serve more out of my gifts. And he said, what brings you passion? What are you passionate about? And that's a good indication for where God wants you to serve in your particular way with your own gifts. And I said, I'm passionate about nutrition. So since that conversation, there was 2 years that went by, and it slowly evolved as I looked more into what the church taught about nutrition and how to care for our bodies, and how much scripture talks about evangelizing through the meal. I always loved to cook. I always loved to try to find ways to make meals more healthy and integrate my nutrition background in that way. And so what I did through Temple and Table, or where it became today, is an opportunity to connect our physical and spiritual health, and then also evangelize through the meal. So that's really where it is today. And I truly believe in today's culture that the meal and nutrition is going to be a more and more powerful way to share our faith and to evangelize our culture.
So what kind of fruits, what kind of, I had to say that.
You have to. I love a pun too.
So what kind of fruits have you seen in your journey with Temple and Table so far?
Yeah. So honestly, a beautiful fruit that I've experienced in my own life is I've grown in my own faith, my own knowledge of what the church teaches around how we care for our bodies, and the beauty that the church has and the wisdom that the church has about caring for our bodies, which are temples after all. And so that's been a beautiful fruit. But kind of more external fruits are, I've seen so many families come together and prioritize mealtime. And I've heard of so many stories of people sharing with me that their friendships have grown since they, started to integrate this in their conversations or into their family culture more than they ever have. And, moms loving cooking again because they realize, or dads too, dads do cooking as well. So just parents saying, oh my gosh, I've been able to help my relationship with my child because of, us cooking together or us experiencing mealtime and prioritizing that. So I think those have been really beautiful fruits. And then my partnership with Couple to Couple League has just been such a joy for me personally to enter into this, really huge part of a marriage relationship with people, and just to help them to acknowledge their connection between nutrition and fertility. And it's just been a really beautiful partnership. So,
yeah. So anything you can say about the men in a relationship, and what can a man do to help himself even
Sure.
with nutrition and fertility?
Yeah, absolutely. So, what I mentioned with, because men obviously have their own fertility health to think about. And for men, those protein rich foods are great. And because sperm require a lot of energy, those vitamin rich foods is also a great thing to focus on. And how they can support their partner is really adapting their own diet, right? So as your wife is maybe trying to reduce her intake of processed foods, commit in doing that with her. I've seen husbands commit to whole foods and Whole30 and really entering into that with their wives and their partners. And I think it's just a really beautiful way for them to support. They're in it together and it affects them both. And so that's the encouragement that I have as well. And to educate yourself on what foods that you're, listening to this podcast is great, right? Because you can say, honey, I know you're in this phase of your cycle, let's have a spinach salad tonight, with some protein, So I think those are really beautiful
Or it
ways.
looks like you need some chocolate, babe.
Yes. Here's some dark chocolate. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
You'll feel better. So someone goes to your website, Temple and Table. What will they find?
Yeah. So on templeandtable.com, I have a lot of recipes. I have blog posts about the connection between spiritual and physical health, different topics there. I also have some shop items there where you can support the ministry, but also just have really beautiful items in your kitchen. I have cooking salts and wooden spatula that's hand carved. So just really beautiful things in your kitchen that make it a better place better environment for you. And it would be a great support of the ministry as well. So
sure. It makes it a joy to cook when you have beautiful things.
That's right.
Yeah.
You can also find Temple and Table on Facebook and Instagram at Temple and Table. And on our website, you can sign up for the quarterly newsletter that I do. So that's a great way to stay connected and learn about new things as we come out with them. I'm hoping to launch virtual cooking classes in the fall or winter of this year. So that's a great way to learn about when those are actually launching, is signing up for our newsletter.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I think your cooking class is still available on fsi.org, isn't it?
Yes, I do have a virtual cooking series available on fsi.org that you can look at and watch at your own leisure. Cook along with me.
Right. That was a great series for Lent. That was just fantastic.
It was. Thank you. It was really fun to put together. So general tips of things that you can incorporate in your nutrition that affect your cycle are: eat a wide range of nutrients, focus on those colors, lots of colors in your fruits and vegetables, adequate protein, plant-based fats, and high fiber, low glycemic, complex carbohydrates. Reduce your inflammatory foods, so focus on minimally processed foods and eating whole foods, and evening out those blood sugar levels. So don't skip meals, combine macronutrients, your protein source, fat source, and carbohydrate source, and you should be good.
Thank you so much. This has been a joy, Amanda.
Oh, it
Thank
was
you so
lovely.
much for talking with us.
Thanks for inviting me.